is Nur Shazwani Safusham. Currently, I'm at Taman Tun Dr. Ismail, a township located between Kuala Lumpur and Petaling Jaya. TTDI has been named after Allahyarham Tun Dr. Ismail as a tribute to the second Deputy Prime Minister's significant contribution to the nation. In paying tributes to Dr. Ismail, we've interviewed family members to understand the life journey of a great leader and his nation-building efforts. Alright, here with me today is Allahyarham Tun Dr. Ismail's eldest son, Mr. Taufik Ismail. Mr. Taufik, thank you so much for being with us today. Of course, in remembrance of Allahyarham, we would like to ask you, what do you remember the most about Allahyarham, especially he's your dad, of course the dad figure, and also the leadership skills in him?
Well, thank you. The last time I saw my father was in Australia when he visited me in 1973, a few months before he passed away, and that was the most memorable moment of my life because that was the last time I saw him alive and the last time I had a conversation with him. And at that time he was quite busy with his Australian trip, and he expressed his concern about the standard of education in Australia at that time, and whether I enjoyed my studies and how well I was doing. These are the things which concern a father normally about how his children are doing, and that's the impression that's been longest lasting with me since he passed away.
Is there any much difference between his sides with his family and also being the deputy minister?
In the sense that was he different as a minister as he was as a father?
Yeah.
I think he tried to keep a balance between family duties and duties to the country. He tried not to mix the two so that he could decide what was best for the country without being swayed by family emotion. And I think this is how he conducted his life as Deputy Prime Minister and as a father.
Yeah. Maybe you can also share some details about the late Tun Dr. Ismail's life and the experiences that shaped his character and also values, especially towards the young generation now.
Well, based on his life, he had been without a mother from the time he was very young. And he was brought up by his father, who was very strict. And he mentioned in his writings that one of the best things that happened to him was being able to travel around Johor with his grandmother to meet his relatives. And I think this is, it speaks about the man's desire to be with his family and with his people. And then he was sent to Australia to study because his father wanted him to further his education and become someone useful under the best of circumstances. So at that time, not many Malays studied science, so I think my grandfather felt that it was time that my father took on the role of being the doctor in the family, and he sent him to Australia to study medicine. And when he was in Australia, he was part of a minority group because not many Malays, not many Asians were in Australia at that time. So based on his Australian experience, he was able to feel what a member of the minority would feel like in modern-day Malaysia. So in that sense, he developed a sense of empathy for the rights of minorities, and as well as what it's like to be in a country where you're governed by one race.
So if you are talking about multiracial, right, how would you describe Tun Dr. Ismail's approach to leadership? I'm sure it's part of his leadership skills in enhancing multiracial. If you can tell us 5 key or 5 unique qualities that you can remember.
Well, I think there are more than 5 qualities.
Yeah.
The first quality is you need to have empathy with the people around you. You have to understand their culture. You have to understand their beliefs. Even more important, they have to trust you that when you visit their house or their place of worship, that you will respect their traditions and their beliefs, and that you will not try to impose whatever it is that you believe onto them. I think that kind of tolerance is very important for a multiracial society. Secondly, I think he believed that that religion plays a very important role, but it should not be the one that dominates one's thinking, because it might serve as a good guide to how to lead a good life as a human being. But I don't think you should allow it to dictate your thoughts or your actions. Apart from being empathetic about race and being sensitive about religion, the third issue is to make sure that everybody is given a chance to do the best that they can, to the ability that they are born into. When it came to crafting the NEP, for example, my father and Tun Razak used the golf analogy of giving a handicap to the Malays.
The way he governed the country, do you recall any specific challenges or obstacles that Tun Dr. Ismail had to face at that time?
Well, at that time, the biggest problem was communism and communalism. Communism as an ideology, but communalism because people were increasingly turning themselves into ghettos and not being willing to mix around. So this kind of ghetto mentality created some kind of silo thinking among the various races, and there was very little interreaction. So that concerned him quite a bit, which is why he and his colleagues formulated the Rukun Negara, so that people would have a national ideology that they can work up towards and live up to.
Yeah, based on the Rukun Negara now, racial issues is the main issue now. And of course, Tun Dr. Ismail is one of the pioneer people that fight for, we have to have a multiracial in this country, in Malaysia. So what do you see? What's your opinion towards that, towards what's happening nowadays?
Well, historically, we cannot ignore the fact that this country's independence was due to the cooperation between the Malay, the Chinese, and the Indians in facing up to the British, who were the colonial power at that time. If the Malay, the Chinese, and the Indians did not have a united front against the British would not have given us the independence that we desired. They would have kept us divided and ruled over us for a much longer time. So we need to give credit to everybody that has contributed to independence and to what makes us our nation now.
Yeah. Talking about that also, talk about his legacy and also the impact that he's given up until now. How has the Tun Dr. Ismail's work continued to influence among family and also friends and also the young generation nowadays?
Well, obviously, we are in a stage where we are yearning for integrity, where we are yearning for transparency, we are yearning for good leadership, and people cannot help but look back in the past to see whether there were any such leaders that were available at that time. And I think to the credit of the founding fathers, when they were leaders, they were young, they were idealistic, and the youth and the idealism showed, and it is a guide for us because right now we have to move away from the geriatrics towards a more youthful leadership who are more committed, who are more idealistic, and once we do that, then we will be following in the footsteps of founding fathers like my dad.
Up until now, what do you think the lessons future generations can learn from what he has done before, not only him, but also, of course, previous leadership?
Well, I think the first lesson that you have to take away is you have to give your children the best education that you can afford. You have to expose them to the various ideas and the various ideals which are floating around. Don't let them be tied down to dogma. Don't let them be subject to a very narrow view of race or religion. Let them be broad-minded, open, and ask questions and continually improve themselves. Mm-hmm. Well, I try to put into practice what I feel. When the government celebrated Tun Dr. Ismail on the 2nd of August, there was an occasion when I was asked to give a thank you speech to the Prime Minister for what he had done. Yeah. And I decided to give it to my niece because I felt that
Kamaria,
because I felt that it was best for someone of her generation and her age group to tell the world what her grandfather meant to her. So I wanted the young to carry the banner, to carry the baton, as it were, in this relay race that we're running. Mm-hmm.
You are the nephew for the late Tun Dr. Ismail. What do you remember the most about him?
Yeah, because he was my family doctor. Mm-hmm. My first memory of him was as my doctor. Mm-hmm. He was, very professional, very strict, very meticulous. Mm-hmm. Even though we got minor things, he would examine us thoroughly. Then I remembered very well about him. Particularly because when I grew up, I became a doctor myself. Mm-hmm. And I look back, I admired the type of discipline that he put on himself. Mm-hmm. And I was living with my grandfather in Johor Bahru. Ismail was practicing in Johor Bahru. And my grandfather's house is between the mosque and the hospital. It is now Pusat Islam. Yeah. So at about 5 o'clock, when I was playing around, we will see Dr. Ismail driving to the hospital. Okay. because he volunteered his services to the hospital in the evening. So I remember that very well. It's stuck in my mind. He underwent a lot of difficulties. So this type of thing about service to the community, serving the community, being accountable, being responsible, I think those were important things that he learned going through those difficult times.
But for Kabaria, of course, like Tan Sri, he's the nephew. Like you, maybe generational apart, quite apart. Him, your aunties and uncles talking about him. So what do you remember the most about Tun Dr. Ismail?
I think for me, sitting here today and listening to Tan Sri, my uncle, you know, talking about the stories, I'm learning too, because I think I've only heard stories, and I think for me what has set in my mind is how principled he was, how disciplined he was, and I think he was, you know, he had a very big impact on my mother's life, especially because my mother was the second child. And she always told me the story of how my grandfather every day would call her to the, you know, dinner time was their time. And in the morning, you know, they'd wake up. And so he said, okay, read the newspaper in Bahasa, translate it for me, so when I come home, you know, tell me the summary of it and tell me your opinion. So she said she was envious of her siblings because they were able to go abroad, especially Uncle Taufik, the eldest. And my grandfather said to her, you can't study abroad until university. So she said she, in hindsight, I think for her, those times she was able to spend with my grandfather. But she said, I think everyone saw my grandfather as being very strict, very disciplined, and I think they feared him. But for her, yes, she feared him, but she had a special bond with him. So that's why I was asking earlier Uncle AB how he was, because I only hear bits and pieces of what he was. And I think, you know, I can't say much because we never met him. He passed away before my parents got married. But I think for me, it is his values that he held, which is what is very, not to say difficult to find today, but it's as Uncle AB said earlier, it's the times today are very different, and to find someone, you know, that trust is also something that I think back then we had personalities in that sense. So.
Talking about the values, Tan Sri, you actually told us about how his father wanted him to do medicine, and now you are in medicine. Maybe is there something that what he said before to you that you actually hold until now?
Well, you know, actually, if you were to say what were the issues, I remember when my grandfather, my father, and Ismail, they were out of government. They were not in civil service anymore. My grandfather is retired. My father was practicing law in Batu Pahat, and Ismail was practicing medicine in Johor Bahru. They would meet in my grandfather's house, and we children would be playing around, and sometimes we would have a drink, and we just listen to them talk. And I was wondering, you know, how come? Sometimes Tun Dr. would come from Singapore, he might be there, but mainly it's history. Why are they talking about government? They're not government. Why are they so interested? You know, well, that they were so concerned about what is right, things being done properly, and so we listened to hear about it. You know, my grandfather is a man of principle, and I remember I could imagine some of the challenges that he had. For example, after May 13, you know, because before May 13, his health issue, he was concerned about his health. That is why he resigned.
Yeah. And then he got back.
Well, he had cancer
Yeah.
twice, treated, he got over it. And then he had a heart problem.
Yeah.
So he went to London to consult one of the best surgeons in UK. That time he was out of government. He was a GP. So this surgeon, very well known, I forget the name now, he advised Ismail to go for heart surgery.
Okay.
So Ismail said, okay, you better go home and think about it.
Okay.
Because you know, this is what, 1968, 69. Undergoing heart surgery was major surgery, high risk. Well, he went back, May 13 occurred. He went back to serve the government.
Yes.
When all that settled, later in the, I think 1970, he went back to see the doctor
Okay.
in London.
Okay.
And then the doctor advised Ismail, he can wait.
Oh, okay.
So Hussein Awang and I, we were not convinced,
Okay.
you know. But we are young fellas. How to advise Ismail?
Yeah.
You know, so we were very concerned.
Based on this story also, I'm sure he is the man of his words. He would definitely get it done with what he believes. But for you, Kamaria, how do you think with the principles that he has and also the values in him, how do you think that it can inspire the young ones, especially in this time, in this era?
I think so. In today's world, it's very, very different.
Yeah.
With social media, with everything around us, and I think as we had a conversation earlier before we started this recording, that you know, the youth now are very vocal. They say what is on their mind,
Yeah.
but they don't think things through. And I think what my uncle's trying to say is, you know, my late grandfather was very principled, and he stuck to what he believed in. And today there are very few personalities that have that. Because social media is out there. People are constantly changing their minds,
Yeah.
especially the younger generation.
Yeah.
I feel that, and as you said earlier, they don't know what they want. And as Uncle Abi said earlier, you know, with my late grandfather, he saw that he worked with Tun Dr very well. They worked as a team. Now you don't see that today.
Yeah.
Everyone is individualistic. I find that in today, people have become a lot more selfish, and I think it's always. And again, I'm generalizing here, but I think, as Uncle Abi mentioned earlier, with my late grandfather's life, it had impacted him a lot. Working in medical field, volunteering, giving his sort of life to the people and trying to save people. Today, you don't see that as much, and I don't see camaraderie as much anymore. I don't see trust, as Uncle Abi mentioned earlier, is very, very difficult today.
So like the politician, they got to work to gain the trust of the people. They must be transparent. They must be accountable. They must show responsibility in service to the people. Now, this is not just for our politicians. It's the same, whether it's America, UK, Australia, it's the same. That's why they're having a huge problem. So like Ismail, he represented somebody that you can trust wholeheartedly, without reservation.
Tan Sri, last question. how would you like the public to remember Tun Dr. Ismail's legacy, especially? And do we do justice to his legacy, especially in regards to what the big issue now is unity? What do you have to say about that, Catherine?
Well, I think Ismail represented, what do you call it, certain values, which is actually transcend race, religion, or whatever else. And if that can come through, that would be a wonderful legacy for whoever wants to work on it for the future. And the main issue is probably you need to do some work on research on trust. Understand the issue because we think it is obvious.
Yeah.
But religion and race is very complex. Now, we got to address those type of issues.
Yeah.
What binds us among the Malays? One is the religion, one is the value system.
Okay.
You know, like I'm Bugis, which are different from the Javanese.
Yeah.
But in Malaysia, we got above that.
Yeah.
Whether you're Bugis, Javanese, Korean, we are Malays. And I think the big thing that Tengku did in terms of independence is to come up with this type of respect for each other and for national unity. We must work together along those lines.
Yeah, agree. Kamaria, last one. How do you see yourself, and also probably next generation for Tun Dr. Ismail, carry the legacy in your own capacity and way to ensure the principles and also the memories live?
Wow. Okay. I think, as I mentioned in the speech the other day, we, the youth, need to come together. And I think, as Uncle Ibi mentioned, how my grandfather kind of looked at it, not as a racial, but everyone as together. And I think that's what's missing today, the multiculturalism. And I'll just tell you a little story. I lived in Oman for a while. And it was very interesting because I asked them, are you first a Muslim, an Arab, or an Omani? And they said, the first thing is we're an Arab.
Okay.
Second, an Omani. And third, we are Muslim. And I had lived in Turkey for a while, and this question was brought onto me as well. And they said, and how do you view yourself? A Muslim, a Malay, or a Malaysian? And I said, a Malaysian, and then a Muslim, and then a Malay. So I always felt that we are all Malaysians as one. Not race, because that's how I've been brought up. I have friends from different cultures and races, but then I came back in 2015, and I didn't realize the racial divide had gotten so deep. And even more so today. I think back then it wasn't as apparent, but today you really see it. So I think when you ask me in what capacity, I think for me, I'd like to try and see if we can try and bring everyone together as not as a Chinese or a Malay or as an Indian, but just as one. And I think if we don't speak up now, then what's going to happen to the future of Malaysia? And I think we as the youth, I think you, me, and the rest of the younger people, I think we should try and see how we can make a better Malaysia and how we could bring, of course the times today have changed, but I think how we could bring the times of, my late grandfather, Tun Razak and Tengku, back. Because now there's a big racial divide, religion as well, and I think back then, I think it was, not to say that religion wasn't important, it was, but today it just divides all of us, and I feel that when you do that, it just, the future of Malaysia then becomes a bit rocky, so as to what it is today. So that's how I think the young, my generation and my cousins are, hopefully can come together in that.
And hold the legacy.
Hopefully, yes.
Uncle Shafi, I'm sure saya pasti Uncle Shafi ada lihat banyak detik-detik bermakna, especially dalam perjalanan dan juga career Tun Dr. Ismail. But maybe awal ni Uncle Shafi boleh cerita sikit lah berkenaan dengan macam mana perjalanan Uncle Shafi dan juga Tun Dr. Ismail.
Sebenarnya saya sangat sulit kepada arwah Tun Razak. Masa tu dia Perdana Menteri Malaysia selepas Tengku Abdul Rahman. Jadi saya lebih kenal Tun Razak daripada Tun Ismail. Tun Ismail semasa tu ialah timbalan Perdana Menteri selepas dia rejoin the government lah, masa lepas Mei 13. Masa ketika arwah kita lah dengan Tun Razak pergi mesyuarat Heads of Commonwealth States di Ottawa, Canada, August 1973, tak silap ya. Masa tu mesyuarat baru mungkin 1 hari saja, belum habis lagi. Kita terima panggilan daripada Kuala Lumpur kepada masa tu High Commissioner Malaysia ke Canada, arwah Tan Sri Zakaria Ali, kalau tak silap, Tan Sri Zakaria Ali masa tu. Jadi itulah macam mana dia nak bagi tahu Tun. Of course is a tragedi, nak kira kehilangan seorang timbalan Perdana Menteri yang kita sanjung lah. Dan saya sendiri melihatlah kedua arwah Tun Ismail dengan Tun Razak begitu akrab. Pemimpin yang saya rasa macam adik-beradik lah. Dia paling hormat menghormati dan paling consult each other lah on major national issues. We see that lah selalu, dia always on the line ke, melawat ke kan. Jadi kehilangan berita kehilangan arwah Tun Ismail begitu mengejutkan lah kita masa itu. Dan saya lihat arwah Tun Razak begitu tertekan lah kerana kehilangan sahabat dia dan kata his greatest supporter in the government lah. So dia, the fact that dia panggil balik Tun Ismail daripada keluar kan dulu, masa dulu, menunjukkan begitu dia sayang dan dia bergantung besar kepada arwah Tun Ismail. So from there, mula-mula dia begitu terharu seketika, tapi as usual he always recovers from such thing and he took charge lah. So, the call from KL could see that he instructed lah funeral arrangement for arwah Tun Ismail. Salah satu aspek yang saya ingat betul lah, macam dia raise his voice sikit lah. No, I said I want him to be buried at the National Museum. Itu yang dulu dia orang kata dah ada sediakan lah ada. So itu satu menunjuk bahawa dia begitu sanjung arwah Tun Ismail, dan he was the first national hero to be buried at the National Museum dekat Masjid Negara. So lepas tu ialah kita buat arrangement. Kita alhamdulillah dapat bantuan daripada kerajaan Canada. Special plane was allocated and we flew to Copenhagen. From Copenhagen we took a flight, I think it was Thai punya airline, terus ke Bangkok. Because that flight goes across the globe kan, dia faster lah.
Yeah.
So dekat Bangkok, our Air Force plane, special plane was there lah waiting
Okay.
to take us back to KL.
Yeah.
So we flew back in the RMAF plane. Lepas saja arwah Tun Dr. terus ke tempat mana arwah Tun Ismail was lah. And then of course lepas tu ni, so the arrangement ni lah was done lah. But I could see that ni lah, everybody was ni lah murung kan in morning. And but see the ramai orang selain pada diplomat, orang kenamaan, orang-orang ramai pun semua datang pada funeral arwah Tun Ismail. Itulah saya rasa satu penghargaan yang natural yang kita nampak begitu mana orang ramai sanjung arwah Tun Ismail.
Uncle Shafi, you witnessed a very crucial event, a very crucial loss in our country. Apa yang Uncle Shafi paling ingat sekali, especially in terms of ekspresi Tunku?
Actual words I can't recollect lah because already 50 years ago. I definitely he was very sad, and then jarang-jarang you nampak they sad. At the same time when in KL I think they were telling bury him somewhere else, and then arwah Tun kata no, I want him to be in the National Mosque, there where he should be. The least we can do for him in his memory, dia kata something like that lah in that sense. Itu yang that shows how he valued arwah Tun Ismail tu, so close. So devastated I will say lah kalau nak kira. Itu yang ingat lah. So
throughout his journey and also Tun Dr. Ismail, apa value yang dia selalu ceritakan berkenaan dengan Tun Dr. Ismail? Because we know that Tun Dr. Ismail, he is the man of his word. He does what he does. So apa yang paling diingati sekali bagi Uncle Shafi?
Satu perkara yang kita sendirilah perhatikan, dan at that time kita sendiri semua tahulah bahawa Tun Ismail tu seorang yang tegas, yang orang kata no nonsense, type of person who will stick to the right, whether you are a friend ke, you are nobody ke, it's the same.
Yeah.
Nobody is above the law. Then he was Home Minister at one stage kan. Masa tu tahulah, masa tu macam-macam punya aktivis orang yang I think at that time communism dan underground still ada some parts kan. And of course lah ada political activists yang setengah-setengah tu ekstrim kan. So they were firm lah. Of course yang undang-undang tu dulu orang kata keras, tapi kalau kita nak selamatkan negara, kita tak boleh biarkan orang-orang yang ada extremist demands to dictate terms to us kan, because kita rule for the good of the majority and the whole country, not just kumpulan-kumpulan kecil. So in that sense he was seen to be a firm but fair person. That's the thing. Of course kita pegawai kerajaan semua takut lah kalau nak jumpa dia. You make sure you know your facts. You know you must be very tertib lah. That's the kind of man. But we all respected him and sanjung dia. Itu yang kita memory of him.
Uncle Shafi dah melepasi pelbagai generasi, pelbagai tampuk kepimpinan. You've witnessed all that. In today's leadership, and also based on what Tun Dr. Ismail's leadership skills, values and principles before this, in your era at that time, during that time, apa yang boleh dipelajari sebenarnya dan juga apa yang boleh dicontohi kepimpinan ketika ini dan juga untuk anak-anak muda yang bakal menjadi pemimpin satu hari nanti?
Ya, memang kita perlukan kata ikon ataupun contoh-contoh teladan kepimpinan yang akan selamatkan negara kita lah, kalau boleh kata macam tu. Dan beliau dan kumpulan dia dengan Arwah Tun Razak, Tunku Abdul Rahman, Tun Tan Siew Sin dulu, Tun Sambantan, they are all part of yang kata kepimpinan yang begitu ikhlas. Nampak dia ikhlas kerana dia akan tak membazirkan duit rakyat, duit negara.
You are, of course, your family related to the late Tun Dr. Ismail. Maybe you can share a bit. What do you remember the most about him? You know, even if you've never met him before or not that close to him before, but I'm sure you have stories about him that you want to share.
We are related in a way because Tun Dr. Ismail and my father are third cousins. You know, they're third cousins. They come from the Dying Pabita clan, so there is a connection, and lots of other connections through marriages and all that. You know, because his sister is married to Tun Awang Hassan, and Tun Awang Hassan's brother is married to my father's sister. So we know each other, and I know also his late wife was in the same school as I was when we were in the convent Holy Infant Jesus in Johor Bahru, you know. But I think I know him through my husband, Shafi, who was Tun Abdul Razak's private secretary. You know, so knows that Tun Abdul Razak and Tun Dr. Ismail were the best of friends. That's why he was selected, although he had resigned from the cabinet due to ill health, but after May 13, 1969, Tun brought him back. And my father, coincidentally, replaced him as chairman of Maybank. See, so that means there is that connection. And I think they all share the same values. They share the same values and principles of you don't get them, you know, at that time, but they had this bond, very tight bond of integrity, honesty, you know, they hard work, very so principled, you know, the two of them, that's why they can work together. I think it was new at the time. Tun had taken over as first as DPM, and then later when he became Prime Minister, he brought in Tun Dr. Ismail as the DPM because he wanted somebody who could work with him and whom he can trust. So the connection was, I think, and they could work together, the PM and the DPM. That's why we could overcome the Magera and bring back Malaysia back to where it was.
To Yasif, I'm sure it's generational apart, right? But of course, your auntie, uncles, your mom always talk about Tun Dr. Ismail. So what do you remember the most?
Well, I can only share what my mom talked about and from how she raised us, and that was based on the family values. But as far as I can recall, my mother used to emphasize that my grandfather was uncompromising, and he had a sense of duty. And I think that sense of duty stemmed from the fact that the family line, as I think Auntie Chom can attest to, that statecraft and that duty to the nation stems generations.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so when my grandfather returned to politics after the troubles, it was because of that sense of duty. But that is not to say that he wasn't a family man. He did love his family, and I think I'm lucky in the sense that he was closest to my mum, and he doted on my mum. And so the stories I hear is more family oriented.
Yeah.
But the principles that were passed down, I think that holds true to our generation as well. So we have a strong sense of right and wrong, that sense of integrity and that sense of duty, which is why I served contractually with the government for a brief stint. So that's the kind of idea that I have about my grandfather.
Auntie Chom, he is the man of his words. Of course, he has his own principles and he gets what he wants and makes sure that he delivers it. How do you see with that values up to this generation now?
You see, I think looking at it, the fact that I'm old, I've gone through it, I have seen, they don't make men like them now, like Tun Dr. Ismail, even my father. You know, my father was chairman of Felda, Maybank, you know. They don't make them like that. They were honest, non-corruptible. They will speak their mind. They will speak their mind. Tun Dr. Ismail will speak their minds. And if he thinks it is not right, he will tell you. Nowadays, you can see, you can read from the papers, things happen. Why? Because people are afraid to speak up, to say it is wrong. You know, you have to speak up and say, I'm sorry, this is not the right way. I was also brought up with the same values, you know, same values. We were brought up simple life. Dr. Ismail, simple, simple life, so brought the children simple. We also brought up simple, through sheer hard work. And these are the values I feel should be passed down the line to the children, to school children, to all, to say the evils of not speaking up when you see that things are wrong.
Yes, if back to this question, of course you are in this generation now. It's just talking about our generation.
Yeah, not your generation.
Okay, probably his generation. How do you see with Tun Dr. Ismail's principles can actually build up a leadership skills that what we need now?
I think my mother had taught us that we have to speak up to what is right and to what is wrong, but there's an art to it.
Yes.
According to the stories that Tun Dr. Ismail, when my grandfather disagreed with Tun Razak, it would always be in meetings in closed doors. Of course, people have to present a unified front. That's understood. But you must be able to have a forum where you can speak, where you can point out the right and wrongs. So there's an art to it, you know. I think what's missing from my generation and the future generations, I think there's a sense of you don't want to offend, and that comes first, rather than the calling out the right and wrong. Whereas actually it should be the other way around, you know. And I think those kind of moral values need to translate to the future generations if our country is to survive. You know.
This is important, you know, for future. We don't want Malaysia to go down the drain, you know.
Exactly.
The future leaders, because they will look at leaders, you know, how you manage, what you say, what you do, what you don't do. They follow. And children also. So it starts from leaders, the KSUs, the DKSUs, the director generals, and in schools, the headmistress, the teachers themselves, they have to model the way.
Yes.
I think we should use the word modeling the way.
I think it's also important in the sense that people tend to try and do the most popular thing.
Yeah.
But if everyone's trying to do the popular thing, there's consensus, but it's
Yes.
false.
Yes.
You know, so my grandfather wasn't afraid to stand up to what is right, even though it's unpopular.
Yes.
You know, because it's the right thing to do. Because eventually people will acknowledge that that was the right thing to do. So that's important. So for standing up for your values, and that at least expresses your uniqueness. Because we all have a different set of values, a different set of morals, and that's what's important for the younger generation to understand. You know, in order for them to help, you know, in any way they can.
To build a better Malaysia.
Yes.
Yeah.
You see, there are principles you follow,
Yes.
like a compass, a direction. Once you follow and you have certain values that you believe in,
Yeah.
decision making is very easy.
Yes.
Huh? That's true. You agree? Decision making is very easy.
Yasif, how, with what she told us and also with the legacy that you hold now, so how do you carry the legacy in your own capacity, and also to ensure that the principles, also the memories will live?
Oh. I think
You have to live it.
you have to live it.
You have to.
You know, as a grandchild, it was difficult in the sense like you're living in the shadow of your grandfather, who was this great man, but I think my grandmother Arwah Topan Rashkian and my mother, they used to tell me you have to make your own mark, but it took me a while to figure out that actually, so long as I live how we live in terms of being disciplined and having values, it'll be easier to do your own thing. You know, for me, I've always tried to figure out, okay, how am I like my grandfather in that sense? Okay, I mean, there's that family values and morality, but my grandfather and that generation were builders. You know, that term nation building was very apt for the time. You know, a lot of institutions were set up by her late father and my grandfather. And so I try and apply that with what I do. So I think it's important to know your history, who you are, and translate that in your own way.
Last one, how would you like the public to remember Tun Dr. Ismail's legacy, and how can we do justice to his legacy, especially regarding the big issue now? It's about unity.
Yeah. To him, there is no race, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
He sees them all the same. You see, in Johor, Johor, you find families like the family of Johor, what I call the elite. They belu anak angkat, you know.
Yes.
Chinese,
Yes.
and then they had Chinese amas.
That's true.
Tun Dr. Ismail also had the Chinese ama.
Yes,
and all
great
that.
ama, yeah.
So to them, race is not an issue, no color to them. So I think we should follow. Nowadays, there's too many of this race, China lah, India. Because my husband is half Chinese, my mother Chinese, you know. So to me, I was brought up in the convent. So there is no race. We don't see race as a color.
Yeah.
To us, they are all the same. During my generation, there was no like Bumi Putra, so we all live equal based on merit. Based on merit. At this time, there was no allocation for tak ada. So we were brought up in that generation. We learned. We had moral studies. You should not steal. You should not lie. We had moral studies in the convent. So these are already embedded in our minds.
Yes, you want to add up to it? Anything with, especially regarding unity and also the legacy that you hold into Dr. Ismail?
So many.
Whatever that come to your mind.
I think I can only speak to myself in the sense that I feel privileged in the sense that I was lucky enough to experience the kind of friendships that my mom had. So my mother also was in a convent, and her friends would come over for open house, Chinese, Indian, Asali, you know, and there was no distinction about race. And as I grew up, before pre-teens, I had that privilege to have friends of different races. It was only when I came back from abroad, there was a sense of the Malays had lunch with the Malays, the Chinese with the Chinese, and it was alien to me. It was very alien to me, and I found out that there's this preference, whether it be in schooling, whether it be or whose friends you should be, and that should be secondary. Of course, identity is important, but your duty to the other person, no matter who they are, what they are, I think that's what needs to live on in the future generations. My grandfather's done a lot of things. He wanted to build a better Malaysia, and I think that sense of building is lost as well. We tend to rely on, more often anecdotally, whatever you want to do, or go to government. But sometimes government has limited ability to help. So if you can't, why don't you build something that will help other people or that will help yourself? I think that's important.
And they all those generations live simple lives.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Simple lives.
Yeah, it wasn't materialistic, but it's, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Astro. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All good?
Okay. You happy?
Yeah, okay.
Are you happy? Okay.